Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, Best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals, episode 772, as we close in on 800 shows and not too terribly long, 772, as we are continuing with the NFL draft preview, position by position in the Arizona Cardinals. And joining me for the off-ball inside linebacker show is Seth Cox, my co-host from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And obviously, we're going to talk about the off-ball backers, a position the Cardinals have some need. And there is a really good prospect at the top of the draft they probably won't get. But it's always a position that we can discuss, Seth. If we look at...
By the way, Jess, did you see that chart that nobody's invested more in off-ball linebackers in the Arizona Cardinals?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Doesn't that just tickle you? I mean, oh, man. I love that we're still chasing the ghost of Daryl Washington.
Daryl Washington, man. Back, an aside, when we started this show in 2013, we had the conversation about cutting ties with like bailing on Daryl Washington and keeping Carlos Dansby because you couldn't you couldn't trust an addict. And that was the case with Daryl Washington. He was so good. They just never could do it. But man, Steve Kine chased it. He tried to pair him with Kevin Minter. Then they brought in Larry Foote. Then the Dayon Buchanans, the Isaiah Simmons. Oh, it's Hassan Reddick. They've tried so hard, but there is one absolute rock solid star at inside backer, and it's coming from a loaded Ohio State team who's going to have 6 first-round picks in this draft, and that is Sonny Styles. Compared to Fred Warner, now in fairness, we need to remember Fred Warner wasn't a first-round pick; he just became that good. But in terms of ability, Sonny Styles kind of has it all, doesn't he?
Yeah, and Styles is the guy, like, if push came to shove and you asked me to say, pick the best player that won't bust for the Cardinals at 3, I'm taking Sonny Styles. I really think he's that talented and that good. So with Styles, you look at it and you go, hey, this is a guy that, checks literally at 6'5", 244, long arms, big hands, freak athleticism. I mean, that's putting it ultra mildly, like freak athleticism. And then you look at the production. We talked a little bit about Arvell Reese in the last show. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but Sonny Styles started 42 games in his career at Ohio State. Arvell Reese started 16. So when you look at a guy, he's just a freak. He's a guy that feels like he's going to be a 10, 12-year starter, an all-pro, and give you basically everything that you could ask for and more. And the fact that you have a chance to draft him and is kind of a position of need and it's just not going to happen is, deflating. And here's the crazy thing, Jess, he doesn't even turn 22 until later this year. So he played 4 years and he's still young. Man, he's just the best. He's the best linebacker in the draft, and it's not particularly close. I think it just really depends on who you listen to, Jess. And so that's the reason.
Is there anyone else worth a first round pick? in
And
this class.
And that's the reason you and I like the consensus board, right? Because like if you go off of PFF, they're going to tell you CJ Allen is worth a top 20 pick. If you go off of our buddy Lance Zierlein, he's going to tell you he's a third round pick, right? So CJ Allen is a guy that could, based on who you talk to, it could be picked at the end of round one. He doesn't check the boxes like Sonny Styles from all the other things, right? He's a guy that came in at 6'1", 230, 31.5-inch arms. He does have massive hands for the arm length. Started a ton of games for 30 games at Georgia. Put up big numbers, was an AP All-American this year, finalist for the Butkus Award. Like he's no pun intended, a dog, right? Understands the position and plays it at a high level. And something that you and I have always talked about when it comes to linebackers, there's this innateness in it, right? Like there's guys that just understand how to play. And sometimes they'll be limited because of their physical limitations, but there's just this reality that a guy like CJ Allen understands how to play inside linebacker and is going to do it at a high level for a long time. I wouldn't take him until 34, and I really don't think he'll be there because I think he could sneak in to the back end.
One of those Georgia defender, man. Those Georgia defenders go quick. So,
but that's it for day one, guys, right?
Yeah. So coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk Web, as we move on to day two, and there are a bunch of them. Day two linebackers to look at. That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Web, talking day two off-ball backers. I think, are you going to talk about number one on that list? Are you going to talk about the kid out of Cincinnati? Or Jacob Rodriguez at Texas Tech, who is an absolute baller himself on that Texas Tech. That Texas Tech squad had some guys up in the front seven. They've got the defensive lineman we talked about in the show a couple of episodes ago, David Bailey, the edge guy, and Jacob Rodriguez was another one of those guys that was he is just a football player, just not quite as gifted athletically.
Yeah, and Rodriguez is a guy that like checks exactly what you just said. 6'1", 231, right? Short arms. Now, I will say this. He tested extremely well, right? That three cone and that short shuttle.
Yeah.
And then he ran a 4.57, had a 38.5-inch vert. But, I mean, there are also some drawback realities, right? He's going to be 24 this year, which for a inside backer, I don't think is a bad thing. But I mean, this dude has played a ton of college football. I mean, just a ton. Started out at Virginia, then went to Texas Tech. Right? He's a guy that's played a ton of games, started a ton of games. Was a defensive MVP, in 2023 and of the Independence Bowl, and then was the first team All Big 12 guy, and then was the AP All American. And dude is just, I mean, the last 2 years are just absurd, Jess. 127 tackles last year, 128 tackles this year, 10.5 tackles for loss last year, 11 tackles for loss this year, 5 sacks last year, 4 interceptions. This is a dude that's just
4 interceptions, 7 forced fumbles last year. He is a playmaker.
Would you take him at 65 if he was there? I would. With a bullet. Like, what do you think?
I think he would be a steal right there. And it's funny because, like, you look at the consensus, he's 43. He's 43. Right. I think that would be, if he's at 65, imagine Rodriguez next to Cody Simon for years to come. Now, assuming Cody Simon becomes anything after what we saw from him last year. But
right. And
Jacob Rodriguez, like, he's a heart and soul type guy. Like, take Mac Wilson's fire, but add production upon production.
Right. And then you got a 2-year like stud that you mentioned in Jake Golday, right? Was at Central Arkansas, and played really, really well. and then made the move up, right? Went to Cincy, and in 20 games at Cincy, 20 starts at Cincy, excuse me, 163 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks, 5 passes defense, no interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, but he checks boxes better than Jacob Rodriguez does, right? And so that's what it comes down to. Do you want the prototype, the 6'4", 240 guy that moves well enough that went up in competition and got better, or do you want the guy that doesn't check the boxes, but man, it's hard to ignore the production and the way that guys play for him, right? Like that's the thing that you look at with a guy like Rodriguez. He's a guy that just everybody wants to run through a wall for.
Everyone else for day 2.
Yeah, so we'll speed run a couple. I don't know what the consensus is on guys, but Josiah Trotter, 6'2", 237 out of Mizzou.
He's at 64 on the consensus.
Yeah, so he played at West Virginia and then transferred over to Mizzou. Had a really good career, and then ended up at Mizzou and played really well. First team All SEC. His dad was decent, right? Jeremiah Trotter, some linebacker that was a star in the 90s in early 2000s for the Eagles. You can tell he's been trained to play the position. That's what I'll say about him. Probably a guy you would take at 65, right? From there, you can go with Anthony Hill Jr. I remember when Anthony Hill Jr. came out, man, it was a big deal, and everybody thought he was the next big thing. And he just never quite, like, he was really, really good, but he was just never the best guy, right? And you look at him, 6'2", 238. Why is a guy that was a 5-star, one of the best linebacker prospects, or recruits coming out, he checks all the boxes. I'm surprised there's not like more consensus on him being in that range with CJ Allen, right? Like the consensus board, he's 49 compared to 33. So that's just a really interesting thing. And I think what gets him slightly, like, people overlook him or maybe don't love him, is that they blitzed him a lot. But who will have more knowledge and understanding of his game than his former defensive coordinator, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
And then the last guy, and a guy that I just truly don't know, and I say I don't know because I just don't know if he fits what the Cardinals want to do, but he is a guy that's a lot of fun and has played really, really well for Pitt, and that's Kyle Lewis. But Lewis, again, like, I just don't know. We haven't found out enough because they really, outside of Cody Simon, they really haven't drafted off-ball linebackers, right? They've invested over and over again in veterans with Nick Rallis as the DC. Lewis is a guy that, dude, his 2024 season was absurd. He was a second team AP All-American, first team All ACC, had 15 and a half sacks or 15 and a half tackles for loss and 7 sacks, plus 4 interceptions. Like, absurd. Like, the production his junior year was just so good. And then you look at him and he is an elite coverage backer.
But he's built more like a safety. He's built like a big safety more than he is a linebacker. 6'2", 220.
And the question just becomes, like, what's the value in that in today's NFL? Right. And it's not that he doesn't offer value, because he offers a ton of value, man. He is so good at what he does. But, like, we're seeing the NFL start to get to a lot of 12 personnel, right? Especially especially in the NFC West with the Seahawks and the Rams. And so can Lewis be a guy that matches up with the tight ends in the NFC West? Can he stand up in the run game? Those are questions that you have to ask. And I don't know if the answer is yes. And that's not a shot at him.
I guess that would probably put him more with those questions. He would make a much better day 3 pick
100%.
rather than at 65.
But you're going to have to take him in round 3 if you want him, I think, because of the coverage ability. So that's what puts him. And then you get to day 3, and you know how linebackers work in day 3, right? You're looking for something very, very specific.
Yes. And with that, coming up next on the Res of Sierra podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, let's run down a few day 3 guys to know. That's coming up next on Rise Up C-Red. We're back on the Rise Up C-Red podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking off-ball linebackers, day 3 guys. You're going to be either looking for elite athleticism, special teams production, or size and production, even if you're not elite athletically. And there's a gazillion of these guys. I know as an Arizona State fan, Keyshawn Elliott will fall into that category. He isn't anything special, but he is adequately athletic. He made a lot of plays for Arizona State, but he's not going to be special in the league, but definitely worth a selection in the NFL draft.
Well, and you mentioned Elliott. He's one of the guys that I had penciled in on this because, again, you're looking for specifics, right? You're looking for guys that are going to be 100% special teams aces, guys that can fill in. I mean, we've talked about it 100 times with these positions, right? They can fill in and give you a start here or there, but you're not going to oversell, right? And Elliott's one of those guys. He has explosive jumps. We didn't get run testing numbers, and he's a great. There's no negatives in his profile, if that makes sense, right? Like there's no like, oh, he been arrested, oh, he's off field issue. Everything you know about Keyshawn Elliott is he's a great teammate, a hard worker, and a guy that will do whatever is asked of him. He's been good in special teams already, and he'll probably be around 5 type of guy that's going to be in the NFL for a decade, just bouncing around teams, playing special teams. A guy that I remember 2 years ago when this kid was a sophomore, just Harold Perkins out of LSU, right? 6'1", 223, did no testing because, well, he hasn't really done much of anything for the last couple of years, right? But second team All SEC is a true freshman All-American, 13 tackles for loss, which was the top of all Power Fives for a freshman, like a true freshman, 7.5 sacks. And then they were like, hey, we're going to have to move this guy off the ball because he is tiny, 6'1", 220, right? And then you look at it and just production dipped year after year. And then he had some injuries and he had some questions if he was going to, if he was a guy that you really wants to play the game at a high level. Had the ACL injury last year in 2024. He's a guy that, like, the defense has to be built around what he can't do and what he's allowed to do, if that makes sense. And I just don't know if that's a defense that Nick Rallis will employ, but he's an intriguing guy because you're talking about, again, a former 5-star best player in the nation recruit that now is kind of just slumming it, being talked about on day 3 of the NFL draft. And then you got the guys that just are always there, right? Deontay Lawson out of Alabama, rotational linebacker, special teams guy. Bryce Bocher out of Oregon, high energy guy, physical, but probably going to be a special teams only player, going to be 24 this year. A guy that is going to, like, kind of off-ball version of Dennis Gardeck, right? Fans are going to love him. He's going to be, He's going to be an electric factory to watch, but this dude has played a ton of football. And yeah, we're talking about him as like a day 3 type of guy. Doesn't cover well, like none of the things that you'd want from a linebacker, but he is literally a Tasmanian devil and will go make himself known on special teams, which, in round 6, who's going to complain about that, right?
Right. A guy I like as well. I watch Big 12 football thanks to ASU. BYU's Jack Kelly. Shorter arms, got solid athleticism, but doesn't he kind of remind you of all the white guy special teams linebackers that the Cardinals had for 2 or 3 years? Joe Walker, Tanner Vallejo, that sort of guy. But he's another one of those fiery guys who can be in the middle of the defense. He'll have to play on special teams, maybe do a little something now and again on defense.
Right. And with Kelly, like, he's the normal 23-year-old, right? Like, people are like, oh yeah, he went on his mission and came back if he's LDS, right? Played at Weber State. And again, I always talk about these guys when they start out at the FCS and then go up and then they're really good. Like, they're guys you can take a flyer on day 3, right?
Well, he was a team captain, so like those high character guys that the Cardinals like to get in their locker room. He's productive. He's good as teammates. He's a good mix of things. Like, Jack Kelly, round 7 would be perfect.
Right. And a guy that would fit the culture and would endear himself to the team and fans, like, all of that makes a lot of sense. One more guy that I think we should at least mention, again, I don't know what the plan is, but another, guy out of Utah, another guy out of the Big 12, Lander Barton. You go back and there was a reality that people wondered if he was going to be like a freak and kind of command, be the next Utah guy, right? In 2022, he was a freshman All-American and the Pac-12 defensive player, or Pac-12 defensive freshman of the year. He had 46 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And he only started 3 games, Jess. But then, he had some injuries. He started the first 7 games. And again, good numbers, 34 tackles, 2 INTs, 1 pick 6. But then he missed the back half of the season with a broken foot. Then he had then the downturn kind of started. In 2024, he had 72 tackles. You might say, well, that's really good. Well, but think about it. He had 72 tackles as a full-time starter. This dude had 46 tackles as a part-timer in 2022, and now he's only up to 72. He also had less tackles for loss and less sacks as a full-time starter. So it was almost like, oh, now that we've seen him and we've got some tape on him, he's a guy that doesn't scare us because we can work away from him. But he's a good athlete. He's a hard worker. He's a guy that really, again, checks a lot of those day 3 boxes that I think can be a helpful guy. But the issue becomes, especially when these guys don't test, right? The issue becomes you need some testing numbers for these guys so you can judge if they're athletic enough to help on specials. You got guys like Terry in New York, who is undersized Mike, but really didn't check any of the athletic boxes. You got guys like Caleb Alarms Orr coming out of TCU, who checks the profile, but when you look at what he's done at TCU and the really, the downturn in production from his 23 season to his 24 season to then, getting better again in 25, you're like, where's the consistency with this guy, right? Like, so that's the thing with these inside backers or off ball backers or however you want to phrase it. You got a lot of them. There's just so many. And by the way, there's usually 20 that are drafted, 25, because 15 of them will go on day 3 because you're filling out special teams. You're looking for guys that are gonna, and that's the problem, is we just don't have enough information on what they did on specials from a linebacker position.
And that's fine. Like for those of you who are listening, we've given you lots of names to know. Will there be more? Probably. Did we name guys that the Cardinals will draft? Maybe not. But now you know some of the names to know as these guys come around, and as you guys listening kind of check off boxes, and you're looking in day 2, looking at day 3, you're like, oh, I'd like to hear that name, and you hear the name, you're like, oh, remember hearing that on Seth and Jess's show.
Well, and the other thing is just with that, right? The biggest thing, and you talked about it, is that when it comes to day 3, you think about it, there's, we'll just say 96. I know there's always comp picks, right? But there's 96 picks that go out the first couple days. And then they go to 252 or whatever. So like over
so many players.
Over 3 days, there's all these guys. And then over 1 day, there's 150 guys, and you're just like, you have to follow along. The picks come fast. Let's be honest. Usually the Cardinals picks aren't even shown on TV anymore. Like, you have to find them online. So then you and I are, following the guys that spoil, because we'd rather get the information ahead of time so we can continue on with our day, as opposed to waiting for it to come across the wire, right, and it get announced. So,
by the way, guys to follow on Twitter, X, to like one of my favorite guys is NFL Draft Diamonds, especially when you get to day 3 when picks are coming in fast. He is always one of the very first to know those picks because he knows all the agents. And so if you and like, I don't care about the drama and surprise of picks. I want to see who the pick is. And so I like the pick tippers on social media. They help me with my job. They help me with just, I'm impatient. And so especially day 2, day 3, when if you're following us on Twitter, if you're following us on X, I often will retweet NFL Draft Diamonds. He's the guy that for the last 10 years that I've been making sure to have on notifications, or at least to have back when it was TweetDeck, I'd have a call-in just for him. But yeah, and that wraps it all up, right, Seth? Because we're unless we're going to talk for another hour about every linebacker, and we're just not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Exactly.
And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. We've got 2 position lefts over the next few days. We've got cornerbacks, we've got safeties, and then we've got a couple of shows. And before you know it, it'll be the actual NFL draft, but we still have our first round mock draft coming up in a couple of weeks, in about a week and a half. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Roop. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up Red Sea, be Red Sea Red, and of course, Rise Up Sea Red.
Roll!